But there's concerns with all this. I mean, it's not just all a bed of roses, right? There's concerns. Here's one of them. Our social skills are struggling. You ever seen two people sitting next to each other and they're texting maybe even each other? We're struggling because we have trouble reading emotion anymore. There's a study done that they took away phones from some people that were very much connected to their phones, took them away and made them interact, and some of those social skills began to come back. But it's having an effect because it's happening that as we interact with that screen, we can't read the emotion in people. In fact, when we end up talking to them face to face, we're having more difficulty reading that emotion. Our critical thinking skills are really suffering because we're so used to multitasking, we can't concentrate enough to put the critical thinking skills on. There was a study done of customers in a fast food restaurant. What it found is that 70% of the parents got distracted by their mobile devices during the meal. 70%. And during that time, you know what their kids were doing? The kids were acting up, they were complaining, they were throwing food sometimes even at the parents. We're having an effect on our parenting. And so there's issues that happen out of those kinds of things. Jobs. Think about the automated checkout line at the grocery store. The kiosk that you go check in at the airline terminal, the toll booth operator. I mean, there's lots and lots of things that you can think of that have been disrupted. Data entry clerks, the travel industry, the travel agencies. I mean, you can think of lots of them that have gone away. And there's issues there because it hurts when we lose jobs, doesn't it? And you look at these fields that are most likely to be impacted. I thought that was kind of interesting. I mean, I look on there and I see IT, and it's kind of interesting that IT would be an industry because isn't IT the one that's fueling a lot of this? Well, in some ways, but think about what's happening as we move to the cloud. You've got all these people that are used to dealing with infrastructure or desktop support or those kind of things. Those jobs are affected. The accounting and finance industry is going to be affected because there's things that can be done to automate pieces of that. And it's going to have a huge effect on jobs when we talk about that. Obviously, as we get into robots, and I mean more, that's going to have an effect on manufacturing. Sales is having an effect. So everywhere, in fact, it's hard to find anything that's not being affected in some ways by this disruption. And yet, even though jobs are being affected, we've got a skill shortage. We've got a problem. Because, for example, graphics designers used to be taught just how to lay out print layouts, right? Well, schools are having trouble keeping up because then we didn't need quite as many print designers, didn't realize that we didn't need quite as many at first, but then started needed people that could design web pages. And then we needed people that could design for the mobile devices because that's a different talent. And we've got to look at it a different way. And now we need actually user interface experts, which is a little bit different even at that. And the schools, I mean, they had to go away from learning print shop to begin to learn things like Flash, and now that's not even good enough. I got to learn HTML5 and I got to learn all these other things. The schools are having trouble keeping up, and in many ways they're still back teaching the old way of doing print layouts. But it's not just that. Look at things like marketing. When we talk about digital marketing, there's a lot of opportunity there. There's not a lot of experience out there. CMOs are concerned about it. They're struggling with that, and they're trying to do it as best they can. Or get into the cybersecurity space, and there's a huge issue there because we don't have enough security professionals. Or they say one of the sexiest professions, I thought that was kind of an interesting way to put it, now is going to be a data scientist. People that can actually analyze this big data and make conclusions out of it. So we've got a shortage out of skills. Privacy, big concern. Did your mama ever tell you that if you're not doing something wrong, then you shouldn't have to worry about it. My mama used to tell me things like that, okay? And there are people that say, well, I'm not doing anything wrong, so I shouldn't have to worry about my privacy. And yet, if you think about it for a moment, how many of you are willing to give up everything about you to the government so they can serve you better? Everybody raise your hand that's willing to do that, okay? Even security. I mean, if you think about it for a moment, we struggled a lot when the TSA came in and we started having all this security going through there, and people still complain about it to some extent. And yet, what they're trying to do is protect us. We understand that. But we struggle with it. We struggled a lot with things like when we found out Edward Snowden, when we got the exposure that the NSA knows all these things about us. Cell phone companies are capturing all these things. In fact, your phone, even if you're not making a call, and even if it's not a smartphone, your cell phone, if you're carrying it around in your pocket, it's actually pinging that tower. They know where you are. They know what's going on. In fact, I was talking to someone not too awful long ago. They can actually make predictions with pretty good certainty of who you're going to talk to tomorrow at what time. And for that matter, where you're going to be. Because we're creatures of habit. And they've got all that data already. And it's not like you said, oh, yeah, you can go track me for that. So privacy is a huge concern. And it's not just a concern, well, let me put it this way. There are ethical concerns that people are concerned about there. How far can we really go with this kind of thing? Cybersecurity. You know, huge issues. Huge issues. People tell you that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. You're going to get hit. And honestly, you do everything you can to prepare for it, but you better be prepared for what's going to happen after you get hit, because that's really what the issue is going to be. Nation states are being involved, and it's not just China and North Korea. That's what we used to think. U.S. is obviously involved. Lots of countries are involved in it, and they look at things like the electrical grid, the nuclear power plants, the water plants, different things like that, and they're trying to strike them. But they don't not only look at those things, infrastructure-wise, they're looking at your company. And it's not just the nation state. Organized crime is big into this, and they've invested a lot of money in this. And so, what do you think it would help? I mean, would it help you to know what your competitor's doing? Would it help you to get to market faster if you could maybe figure out what your competitor's doing, or figure out some way to slow them down? Or what about something like, you know, we're sharing information back and forth with suppliers today. What if we went ahead and said, somebody's going to change that information just a little bit? I mean, huge issues that could happen out of that. But the biggest cybersecurity threat is you. 90% of senior managers say that they have actually emailed or put into Dropbox or something corporate files. 50% of them say that when I leave the company, I take corporate files with me. So there's issues out of that. We've got to be aware of it. And by the way, if your IT person tells you, don't worry about security, I got that handled, be worried, very worried. You need to be looking at and making sure you've got outside help with those kinds of things. So what's holding us back? Too often, we've got a cash cow. We've got a profitable company. We're trying to make the next quarter's profits. We've got all those kind of things going on. So we're concerned about that. And we've got to make sure that we're doing that, so that actually holds us back. And as we're doing that, we actually have developed a protect and defend the status quo. We look at, we've got all these barriers to entry, we've got these regulations, we've got those things, and they're going to protect us. Honestly, it won't protect you anymore, because people are coming at you from other sides of the world. People are coming at you with other technologies. The taxi drivers are trying to fight Uber right now. They're not being very successful at it. People are trying to fight Airbnb. They're not going to be successful. Too many people are assuming it won't happen to them. It's a huge mistake. You know, Blockbuster thought that. Lots of other companies. Kodak thought that. Sometimes we have a lack of urgency. Sometimes what happens is we don't really know where it's going to go. And so we have a lack of vision. Sometimes we blame it on the old technology we've got. Or sometimes we just don't know what to do. I got news for you. If these are issues, you need to be overcoming them. So what can we do? We look at, first of all, recognize this is not just an IT project or series of projects. This is something that's going to change the very core of your company. It's going to eliminate the silos in your company. It's going to unify the processes and the information. It's going to create new products. It's going to create new services. It's going to tie you in tighter with your supply chain. It's going to do all these things. It's a huge deal. It's got to have leadership from the top. You need to change the game internally. Look at how you're looking at things. Too often what's happening, we've got a silo over here and a silo over here, and they both think they're doing good things for the company, but honestly, they're at odds with each other. We're not driving forward together. We're not focused. Our culture needs to be much more about empowerment. We've got a lot of people in our companies that honestly, they're not engaged. I mean, there's studies done that like 80% of them are not engaged. They're there for a paycheck. And what I tell people when I work with them is, I don't want just your hands. I want your head and I want your heart. And it's up to me to figure out how to help them get that. Because that's what's going to make the difference. Think about how much management we've put in place to watch over those people because we don't trust them. I mean, really, that's what a lot of it is. We've got to develop, Stephen M. Covey calls it the speed of trust. You need to become an expert in how to do changes. There have been lots of great strategies, lots of projects that have failed because we don't know how to change people and how to influence them to change. We've got to learn how to do that, and there are ways to do it. But even those studies keep changing all the time. Become a student of that. Obsess about your customer. Really, really focus on it. Your speed of execution has got to be dramatically increased. And you've got to be much more flexible as a company than you've ever been before. What that's going to happen, you're going to see companies begin to shrink. They're going to be reaching out to their competition and do co-opetition with them. They're going to have other companies that are coming in that they're going to outsource. In essence, what happens is, or have a cooperative agreement, that are going to cause these companies to shrink because I don't need all these things. Get the help you need. That's one thing I would really emphasize to you. Get the help you need. Get somebody that's going to go out and look at that. Get somebody that's going to challenge you. You know, it's almost a given that within the next 10 years, you're going to face some kind of event that's going to be a huge disrupting event, perhaps even an extinction event for you. And the problem is, by the time you recognize it, it may be too late for you to react. That's what happened to Research in Motion. That's what happened to Blockbuster. I mean, name company after company. John Kotter wrote a book called Accelerate. And he said, I could name you 1,000 companies that very same kind of thing happened to. Realize time is not your friend. You've got to have a sense of urgency about this, and it's got to be going quickly. But overall, recognize too, the payoff is worth it. Capgemini did a study. You're digitally astute, 26% more profitability than your competitors. That's a huge difference. Thank you.